Brilliance and the Great Journey. The waters of the Mississippi flowed tirelessly, carrying with them the stories of countless aquatic lives. Among the turbulent currents, a golden shimmer stood out. It was Brilliance, a young goldfish with scales that glittered like submerged stars. Unlike his companions, who were content to drift with the current, Brilliance harbored an unusual dream: to swim upstream to the river's very source. On a December morning, as the cold air brushed the water's surface, Brilliance watched the other fish in their usual routines. Elderly carp murmured about the dangers of venturing upstream, while lazy catfish dozed in small underwater caves. The contrast between his adventurous spirit and the apathy around him was stark. "Today is the day," Brilliance decided, his eyes sparkling with determination. He quietly bid farewell to the only home he had ever known and began swimming against the current. Immediately, he felt the force of the water pushing him back, but his fins beat with renewed vigor at every stroke. Not far away, a group of trout watched with disdain. "Look at that fool," one of them sneered, her voice dripping with scorn. "He won't last a day in this madness." The cutting words of the trout reached Brilliance's ears, but instead of discouraging him, they ignited an even stronger fire in his heart. He remembered the stories his grandmother used to tell about brave fish who defied the impossible. "If they could do it, so can I," he murmured to himself, redoubling his efforts. As he swam further, Brilliance began to notice subtle changes in his surroundings. The murky waters of the lower Mississippi gradually gave way to clearer currents. Aquatic plants he had never seen before sprouted among the rocks, and small, unfamiliar fish watched him with curiosity. On the third day of his journey, Brilliance faced his first major challenge. A violent storm churned the river into a furious maelstrom. Towering waves threatened to swallow him, and for a moment fear threatened to overshadow his courage. Then, a deep, calm voice emerged from the depths. "Young swimmer, don't fight the storm. Dance with it." It was an ancient alligator snapping turtle, her shell covered in moss and the marks of time. With fluid movements that belied her heavy appearance, she demonstrated how to navigate the waves. Brilliance watched closely and, mimicking her movements, managed to cross the most turbulent section. When the storm finally subsided, he turned to thank his savior, but she had already vanished into the depths, leaving only her advice echoing in his mind. True strength lies not in fighting nature, but in learning to flow with it. Days turned into weeks, and Brilliance pressed on relentlessly. His once delicate body now displayed muscles forged by constant effort. His scales, once merely golden, now reflected all the colors of the river, as if he had absorbed the essence of his journey. At a particularly challenging bend in the river, Brilliance encountered an old sturgeon, a rare creature that had witnessed decades of changes in the Mississippi. The sturgeon, impressed by the young goldfish's determination, shared ancient secrets about the river's currents and hidden paths. "There is more to the river than water and stones, young Brilliance," said the sturgeon, his cloudy eyes fixed on a distant point. "There are stories, dreams, and the strength of all who came before us. Carry them with you, and they will guide you." With these words, the old fish etched a map in the sandy riverbed, revealing secret passages and favorable currents that could aid Brilliance on his journey. It was knowledge passed down through generations, rarely shared with outsiders. Armed with this newfound wisdom and inspired by the sturgeon's words, Brilliance felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was not merely swimming against the current, he was rediscovering the river's secrets, connecting with a lineage of brave swimmers who had come before him. As Christmas approached, bringing with it colder temperatures and more challenging waters, Brilliance realized that his journey was more than a personal quest. It had become a testament to perseverance, a story that would echo through the waters of the Mississippi for generations. With every stroke, every obstacle overcome, Brilliance drew closer not only to his physical destination, but also to a deeper understanding of courage, purpose, and the true meaning of swimming against the current. The Mississippi, with its oscillating waters and winding banks, was more than just a river. It was a world unto itself, teeming with life and mysteries. As Brilliance advanced on his journey, he discovered the nuances of this complex ecosystem. Near St. Louis, the young goldfish encountered a diverse community of catfish. Unlike the lazy catfish he had met at the beginning of his journey, these were curious and full of stories. Big Whiskers, the group's leader, with long whiskers like sensitive antennas, shared with Brilliance the changes he had observed in the river over the decades. "The river isn't the same anymore," Big Whiskers murmured, his opaque eyes reflecting distant memories. "Humans above have changed so much. Sometimes the water smells strange, like something we don't recognize." Brilliance absorbed this information, realizing that his journey was not just about swimming against the current, but also about understanding the transformations of the river itself. He noticed occasional oil slicks on the surface and plastic debris trapped between rocks, silent witnesses to human influence. Further ahead, near an old railway bridge, Brilliance met an otter named Ripple. With her glossy fur and bright eyes, Ripple embodied joy and adaptability. She taught Brilliance how to use currents to move more efficiently, even taking advantage of the whirlpools that had once frightened him. "Life in the river is like a dance," Ripple explained, twirling gracefully in the water. "You need to learn the steps, but also improvise when the music changes." Together, Brilliance and Ripple explored underwater caves and discovered hidden sandbanks. The otter showed Brilliance how riverine and aquatic animals cooperated, forming a delicate ecological balance. Ospreys soared overhead, herons waded in shallow waters, and beavers built their dams, each playing a role in the great theater of the river. As they moved further north, the climate grew colder, and Brilliance faced new challenges. Ice began to form along the riverbanks, and the water grew more frigid. It was then that he met Aurora, a rainbow trout migrating from the colder northern waters. Aurora, with her iridescent scales reminiscent of the celestial phenomenon she was named after, brought stories of the northern lands. She spoke of melting glaciers, shifting seasons, and how these changes were impacting life in the river. "The world is changing, Brilliance," Aurora said, her voice heavy with concern. "We creatures of the river must adapt faster than ever before." As they swam side by side, Aurora shared techniques for conserving energy in cold waters and finding food under harsh conditions. In return, Brilliance recounted his journey and the friends he had made along the way. One day, as they passed a small riverside town adorned for Christmas, Brilliance and Aurora witnessed something that left them in awe. Human children, bundled up against the cold, were launching small paper boats into the water. Each boat carried a lit candle and a written wish. "It's a local tradition," explained an old salmon passing by. "They believe that if the boat reaches the ocean with the candle still burning, their wish will come true." Brilliance watched in fascination as the tiny boats danced on the surface, their flickering lights reflecting in the water. In that moment, he felt a profound connection not only with the river, but also with all the beings who relied on it and celebrated its presence. As December progressed, bringing the promise of Christmas, Brilliance realized that his journey had transformed into something far greater than he had ever imagined. It was no longer just about reaching the Mississippi's source. It was about understanding the interconnectedness of all lives touched by the great river. With Aurora by his side, and the lessons of Ripple, Big Whiskers, and so many others in his heart, Brilliance pressed on, more determined than ever to reach his goal, and perhaps make a difference in the aquatic world he loved so dearly. As Brilliance and Aurora ventured further upstream, the challenges grew more intense. Winter tightened its icy grip on the Mississippi, and the waters became colder and more turbulent. Floating ice sheets turned into dangerous obstacles, threatening to slice through their delicate scales. One particularly frigid morning, Brilliance woke to find Aurora shivering uncontrollably. "I don't know if I can keep going, Brilliance," she whispered, her voice weak. "The cold, it's too much for me." Brilliance's heart sank. He couldn't abandon his friend, yet he also felt the insistent call of his goal. It was in this moment of doubt that a new character appeared. Shade, an electric eel with a bluish glow and an unpredictable demeanor. "You two look lost." Shade slithered closer, his eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and malice. "Perhaps I can help. For a price." Brilliance hesitated. There was something in Shade's voice that unsettled him, but Aurora's condition worried him too much to ignore any offer of assistance. "What kind of price?" Brilliance asked cautiously. Shade grinned, revealing sharp teeth. "Oh, nothing much. Just your loyalty. Join me and I'll take you to a warm, safe place. Abandon this foolish journey." Shade's proposal was tempting. The idea of warmth and safety was nearly irresistible in the face of the relentless cold. But something inside Brilliance rebelled against the thought of giving up on his dream. "And if we refuse?" Aurora asked, her voice trembling not just from the cold, but also from fear. Shade's smile vanished, replaced by a menacing expression. "Then I might have to convince you another way." He began to emit small electric sparks, a clear demonstration of his power. Brilliance positioned himself protectively in front of Aurora. "We don't need your help, Shade. We'll find our own way." Infuriated by their refusal, Shade sent a jolt of electricity into the water around them. Brilliance and Aurora barely managed to escape, swimming frantically away from the danger. The ensuing chase was intense. Shade pursued them relentlessly, using his ability to generate electricity to create artificial currents that hindered their progress. The two friends were forced to swim through narrow, dangerous passages, risking sharp rocks and treacherous whirlpools. At a critical moment, Aurora became entangled in a mass of aquatic plants. Without hesitation, Brilliance turned back to help her, even as Shade closed in on them. "Go, Brilliance!" Aurora cried. "Save yourself!" But Brilliance refused to leave his friend behind. With Herculean effort, he managed to free Aurora, but the delay allowed Shade to catch up. Just when escape seemed impossible, a powerful voice echoed through the water. "Stop!" It was Triton, a massive albino sturgeon revered as the guardian of that part of the river. His imposing presence made even Shade back away. "Shade," Triton said, his deep voice resonating in the depths, "your actions shame us all. The river is a place of harmony, not conflict." Shamed and intimidated, Shade retreated into the shadows, leaving Brilliance and Aurora exhausted but safe. Triton turned his attention to the two young fish. "You have shown great courage and loyalty, but your journey is far from over and the challenges will only grow." He guided them to an underwater cave, where the water was surprisingly warm, heated by underground springs. There, Brilliance and Aurora were able to rest and recover. As they rested, Triton shared with them ancient legends of the river, recounting tales of other fish who had attempted the same journey as Brilliance. Some had succeeded, others had failed, but all had left their mark on the Mississippi's history. "You carry not just your own dreams," Triton said, "but the hopes of all who came before you. Your journey is a testament to the resilience of our kind and the eternal magic of the river." Triton's words ignited a new flame of determination in Brilliance. He realized that his quest was greater than himself. It was a journey that could inspire others and perhaps even bring change to the river. As they prepared to leave, revitalized and with a renewed sense of purpose, Triton gifted them a scale from his own tail. "This will guide you through the darkest waters," he explained. "But remember, the true light comes from within." With gratitude in their hearts and a new ally in their journey, Brilliance and Aurora bade farewell to Triton, ready to face whatever the river had in store. The conflict with Shade had strengthened them, and Triton's wisdom had prepared them for the challenges ahead. as they swam out of the cave and back into the cold waters of the Mississippi, Brilliance felt a profound change within himself. He was no longer just a small goldfish dreaming of the river's source. He had become a symbol of hope and perseverance for all the inhabitants of the great river. As Brilliance and Aurora continued their journey upstream, the Mississippi's banks began to change, revealing the growing influence of humanity. At one bend in the river, they encountered a group of map turtles in distress. Their leader, an elderly turtle named Mosaic, explained their dire situation. "The humans are draining our swamp to build, our eggs, our home. Everything is at risk." Brilliance felt torn. His goal of reaching the river's source suddenly seemed less urgent in the face of the turtle's immediate suffering. Aurora, sensing her friend's dilemma, suggested, "Maybe we can help and still continue our journey. We don't have to choose." Taking on the challenge, Brilliance and Aurora dove into the complex task of saving the turtle's habitat. They discovered that by working together, they could redirect small currents to keep the swamp hydrated. Aurora used her knowledge of cold waters to create temporary ice barriers, while Brilliance employed his agility to guide schools of smaller fish, creating water movement that helped spread vital nutrients. During this process, Brilliance met Echo, a young orphaned otter who dreamed of finding her family. Echo's story touched Brilliance deeply, reminding him of his own search for purpose. "I can help you look for your family," Brilliance offered, "while we continue upstream." This new mission added an extra layer of complexity to their journey. Now, in addition to battling the current and the cold, Brilliance kept an eye out for any sign of Echo's family. Their search led them to explore hidden tributaries and secluded lagoons, each detour an opportunity for learning and growth. In one of these explorations, they stumbled upon an ancient steamboat graveyard. The rusted structures, encrusted with algae and freshwater coral, told silent tales of a bygone era. There, they met Whisper, a ghostly, nearly transparent fish who reluctantly guarded the forgotten site. Whisper, with his ethereal voice, shared legends of a lost treasure hidden among the wrecks. "Many have come seeking riches," he murmured, "but the true treasure of the river cannot be owned, only experienced." Intrigued, Brilliance and his companions decided to investigate. As they explored the old ships, each faced their own inner challenges. Aurora battled her fear of deep shadows. Echo yearned for a sense of belonging, and Brilliance questioned whether he had strayed too far from his original goal. It was Echo who ultimately discovered the treasure, not gold or jewels, but an ancient map of the Mississippi, preserved in a sealed bottle. The map not only showed the way to the river's source, but also revealed sacred sites and long-forgotten migratory routes. Whisper, seeing the reverence with which they treated the discovery, decided to join the group. "Perhaps it's time to leave the past behind and help shape the river's future," he said, his translucent form glowing with newfound resolve. With the map as their guide and Whisper as a new ally, the group continued their journey. They used their newly acquired knowledge to help other communities along the way, guiding lost fish back to their migratory routes, restoring sacred sites, and sharing nearly forgotten river stories. As Christmas approached, Brilliance realized that his journey had become something far greater than a personal quest. He was weaving a tapestry of hope and renewal throughout the Mississippi, connecting lives and stories. One night, while resting under a starry sky reflected on the water's surface, Brilliance shared his thoughts with his friends. "We began this journey for different reasons," he said, looking at each of them. "But now we are united by a common purpose. We are rediscovering the heart of the river." Aurora, Echo, and Whisper nodded in silent agreement. Together they had faced challenges, uncovered mysteries, and touched countless lives. Yet the river's source still called to them, promising more adventures and revelations. With the map as their guide and their hearts united in purpose, the group prepared for the next stage of their journey, knowing that each bend in the river could bring new challenges and wonders to discover. Winter deepened, and Brilliance and his companions' journey became increasingly challenging. The waters of the Mississippi were colder than ever, and large chunks of ice floated dangerously around them. Despite the difficulties, the group persevered, inspired by their mission and the bond they had formed. One morning, after waking from a brief rest in a small cove, Brilliance noticed something strange. The water around them seemed different, darker, thicker. Aurora was the first to notice the smell. "Something's wrong," she said, her voice trembling with worry. "The water, it's contaminated." Whisper, with his sharp senses, confirmed the group's fears. "It's an oil spill," he murmured, his translucent form trembling with anguish. "It's coming from a ship further upstream." Panic quickly spread among the aquatic inhabitants. Fish, turtles, and other creatures swam frantically, trying to escape the black stain spreading like a deadly shadow. Brilliance felt his heart sink. All the progress they had made, all the lives they had touched along the way, were now under threat from this disaster. For a moment, he felt small and powerless in the face of such a massive problem. Then Echo, the young otter, spoke with surprising determination. "We can't give up. The river needs us now more than ever." Her words sparked a flicker of hope in Brilliance. He looked at his friends and saw the same resolve in their eyes. No matter how impossible it seemed, they had to do something. "We need a plan," Brilliance said, his mind racing. "Aurora, you know the cold currents. Can we use them to contain the spill?" Aurora nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I can guide the colder currents to create a natural barrier, but we'll need help to move them." "I can gather the larger fish," Whisper offered. "Together we can create waves to direct the currents," Echo added. "And I can swim to the surface to observe the extent of the damage and guide our efforts." With a plan in motion, the group quickly mobilized. Brilliance swam tirelessly from one side of the river to the other, coordinating efforts and inspiring others to join the cause. Fish of all species, turtles, and even some aquatic mammals came together in an unprecedented effort. Aurora led a group of fish in creating a barrier of cold water, while Whisper and the larger fish generated waves to contain the spread of the oil. Echo, swimming at the surface, provided crucial updates on the direction and extent of the spill. Hours passed in a whirlwind of frantic activity. Brilliance felt every muscle in his body protesting against the continuous effort, but he didn't dare stop. The fate of the river, and all who depended on it, was at stake. Just when it seemed his strength might fail, something incredible happened. The birds flying over the river began dropping absorbent materials, leaves, feathers, even small bits of wood, into the water. It was as if all of nature were uniting to save the Mississippi. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the oil slick began to recede. Aurora's cold water barrier was working, containing the spill, while the absorbent materials helped clean the surface. It was Echo who brought the news everyone was waiting to hear. "It's working! The oil is being contained!" A collective sigh of relief swept through the river. Brilliance looked around, marveling at what they had accomplished together. Fish that had barely tolerated each other before were now working side by side. Predators and prey had set aside their differences for the greater good. When the crisis finally passed and the waters of the Mississippi began to clear, Brilliance gathered everyone who had helped. "Today," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "we didn't just save the river. We saved our home, our family. We proved that together we can overcome any challenge." This event marked a turning point, not only in Brilliance's journey, but in the life of the entire river. News of how the Mississippi's inhabitants had united to combat the spill spread quickly, inspiring other rivers and aquatic communities. For Brilliance, it was a revelation. His quest to reach the Mississippi's source was no longer just a personal journey. It was a mission to unite and protect the entire river and its inhabitants. He understood that the true purpose of his journey was far greater than he had ever imagined. With a newfound sense of responsibility and purpose, Brilliance looked to his friends, Aurora, Echo, and Whisper, and all the new allies they had made. "Our journey is far from over," he said. "In fact, it's only just beginning." In the days following the oil spill, a remarkable transformation occurred along the Mississippi. News of the extraordinary unity of the river's inhabitants to combat the catastrophe spread quickly, both through the waters and along the banks. Brilliance and his companions, Aurora, Echo, and Whisper, became symbols of hope and cooperation. Wherever they swam, they were met with respect and admiration. Fish that might once have ignored them now paused to listen to their stories and seek advice. One day, as the group rested in a small tributary, they were surprised by the arrival of an unusual delegation. Led by a majestic heron named Wise Plume, the group included beavers, otters, and even some riverside birds. Wise Plume addressed Brilliance in a solemn voice. "Your actions have inspired not just the inhabitants of the waters, but also those of us who live on the banks and in the skies. We have come to offer our help in your journey." Udisilu. This offer of alliance between aquatic and terrestrial creatures was unprecedented. Brilliance felt the weight of responsibility, but also the excitement of the possibilities that lay ahead. "We are honored," Brilliance replied, exchanging glances with his friends. "But how can we work together when our worlds are so different?" It was Echo who suggested a solution. "We can create a river council where all creatures can share knowledge and solve problems together." The idea was met with enthusiasm. In the days that followed, Brilliance and his friends worked tirelessly to establish this council. They organized meetings in locations accessible to both aquatic and terrestrial creatures, creating a literal and figurative bridge between the two worlds. The impact of these changes was profound and far-reaching. With the help of the birds, news and warnings could now be transmitted quickly along the river, enabling faster responses to threats and changes. The beavers shared their expertise in dam building, helping to create more diverse and stable habitats for fish and amphibians. Otters and fish worked together to remove debris and pollutants, improving the water quality for everyone. Creatures of different species began to share unique knowledge, enriching the collective understanding of the river's ecosystem. With sentinels both in the water and the air, the River Council could better anticipate and prepare for potentially harmful human activities. However, not all consequences were positive. Some animals, especially solitary predators, saw this new unity as a threat to their way of life. Rumors began to circulate about a group of alligators openly opposing the council, fearing they would lose their status as apex predators. Additionally, the increased activity and organization of the river's creatures did not go unnoticed by humans. Fishermen and boaters began to observe unusual patterns in the animals' behavior, leading to increased curiosity and, in some cases, human interference. Brilliance found himself navigating increasingly complex waters. He was no longer just a young goldfish searching for the Mississippi's source. He was now a leader, a mediator between worlds, carrying the hopes and fears of countless creatures. One night, as the group discussed their next steps, Aurora expressed what they were all feeling. "Our journey has changed so much. Sometimes I wonder if we're still on the right path." Brilliance was silent for a moment, reflecting. Finally, he replied, "The path may have changed, but our destination remains the same. We are not just seeking the river's source, but the source of the harmony and life that flows through all of us." With these words, the group renewed their determination. They knew the challenges ahead would be even greater, but they also understood that they were no longer alone. The true strength of the river, its diversity, resilience, and interconnectedness, was finally being realized. And so, Brilliance and his companions continued their journey upstream, not just as travelers, but as catalysts for a change that would echo for generations to come. As they pressed forward, the challenges grew more complex. Winter deepened, bringing with it snowstorms that froze the waters of the Mississippi and made navigation even more treacherous. One day, while battling an especially strong current, the group encountered a massive hydroelectric dam. The imposing structure completely blocked their path, its turbines spinning menacingly. "How are we going to get past this?" Echo asked, her voice trembling with apprehension. Brilliance studied the dam, his heart heavy. This was a challenge unlike anything they had faced before. It wasn't something they could simply swim around or through. "We need to think differently," Brilliance said, his mind racing. "We can't go over or under it, but maybe we can go through." Aurora looked at him, puzzled. "Through? But how?" It was then that Whisper, the ghostly fish, had an idea. "Dams have locks to let boats pass. If we could find a way to activate the lock?" Whisper's suggestion sparked a daring plan. Using the combined knowledge of the River Council, the group devised a strategy. Echo, with her ability to leave the water, would play a key role. She could observe the human usage patterns of the lock and signal the right moment for the group to act. In the days that followed, each member of the group had to confront their own fears and limitations. Aurora, accustomed to cold waters, had to swim near the turbine-warmed surface to map the currents. Whisper had to use his nearly invisible form to infiltrate the dam's structure and understand its mechanisms. Brilliance faced his greatest challenge yet, not only leading his friends but coordinating the efforts of dozens of other creatures who had joined the mission. He learned to delegate tasks, trust in the unique skills of others, and keep hope alive even when things seemed impossible. Finally, after days of preparation, the moment to act arrived. When Echo signaled that the lock was about to open for a boat, the plan was set in motion. A group of larger fish created a distraction, splashing and jumping unusually to draw the attention of the human operators. Meanwhile, Whisper guided a school of smaller fish to manipulate the lock's underwater mechanisms. Brilliance, Aurora, and the others positioned themselves, ready for the race of their lives. When the lock doors began to open, they swam with all the strength they had. The passage through the lock was chaotic and terrifying. The turbulent waters tossed them about, and for one harrowing moment, Brilliance feared they had made a fatal mistake. But then, in a moment of clarity amidst the turmoil, he saw something that changed everything. Other fish, species he had never seen before, also seizing the opportunity to pass through. In that instant, he realized his journey wasn't just about reaching the source. It was about opening pathways, about showing that the impossible could be achieved when everyone worked together. When they finally emerged on the other side of the dam, exhausted but triumphant, Brilliance looked at his friends with newfound respect. Each of them had grown, pushed past their limits, and become more than they ever thought possible. Aurora, once timid and hesitant, now radiated confidence. Echo, the young otter who had once only dreamed of finding her family, now saw herself as part of something much greater. Whisper, who used to hide in the shadows, had become a valuable and respected strategist. And Brilliance, well, Brilliance barely recognized the fish he had been when this journey began. He had learned to lead not through power or force, but through empathy, collaboration, and the courage to dream big. That night, as they rested in a small tributary beyond the dam, the group reflected on how far they had come. "You know," Brilliance said, gazing at the stars reflected in the water, "when I started this journey, I thought it was about swimming against the current. But now I see it's about so much more. It's about changing the current itself." Aurora nodded, her eyes shining. "It's about showing that when we unite, we can overcome any obstacle. And about finding a family in the most unexpected places," Echo added, smiling at her companions. Whisper, his translucent form glowing softly, concluded, "It's about discovering that our true strength doesn't come from swimming alone. but from swimming together. As the group prepared to sleep, ready for the challenges the next day would bring, Brilliance felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. They were still far from the Mississippi's source, but in a way, they had already reached an equally important destination. They had found their true selves and their place in the great flow of life. As Brilliance and his companions drew closer to the Mississippi's source, the environment around them changed dramatically. The waters grew clearer and colder, and the landscape became wilder and more untamed. They were entering territory few from the lower river had ever seen. One morning, as they swam through a particularly narrow stretch of the river, they were startled by a thunderous sound from above. It was the roar of a waterfall, the largest they had ever encountered. "It's St. Anthony Falls," Aurora whispered, her eyes wide with awe and fear. "They say it's the last great barrier before the source." Brilliance knew this would be their final and most difficult challenge. Overcoming this waterfall would require everything they had learned and more. As the group debated their options, they were approached by an old, scarred salmon named Leap. He had spent his life trying to overcome the falls, failing countless times, but never giving up. "You're not the first to attempt this journey," Leap said, his voice hoarse with experience. "Many have tried, but few have succeeded. The falls don't forgive mistakes." Leap shared with them the secrets he had learned over the years, the hidden currents, the treacherous rocks, the precise moments to leap. But he also warned them, the falls aren't just a physical challenge. They test your spirit, your determination. Many give up not because they can't do it, but because they lose faith in themselves. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Brilliance and his friends began preparing meticulously. Aurora used her sensitivity to cold currents to map the most favorable flows. Whisper, with his ability to go unnoticed, explored the most dangerous parts of the falls, identifying potential routes. Echo, unable to swim against the strong current, took on a crucial role in a different way. She used her unique perspective above the water to chart the best trajectory, marking resting points and areas of greatest risk. Brilliance, for his part, worked tirelessly to strengthen not only his body, but also his mind. He knew that, in the critical moment, it would be his willpower that would make the difference. Days passed in intense preparation. The group practiced leaping over smaller waterfalls, perfected their swimming techniques against strong currents, and honed their endurance. As the moment of truth approached, Brilliance realized they needed something more, not just for themselves, but for all who might follow. Inspired by Leap's story, he proposed a bold plan. "What if we could create a permanent passage through the waterfall?" Brilliance suggested. "Something that would help not just us, but all the fish who dream of making this journey." The idea was daring, almost impossible, but the group embraced it with enthusiasm. Working with the river council they had formed, they mobilized creatures of all species. Beavers used their construction skills to create small, strategic dams. Birds carried stones to form underwater steps. Even a few curious otters joined in, using their nimble paws to move pebbles and create swimming corridors. The work was arduous and dangerous, but day by day, the passage began to take shape. It was a feat of natural engineering, invisible to human eyes, but a marvel to the river's inhabitants. On the eve of their final attempt, Brilliance gathered his companions at the edge of the roaring waterfall. The air was heavy with anticipation and nervous energy. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice almost drowned out by the crashing water, "we won't just be trying to reach the source. We'll be opening a path for all the dreamers who come after us." Aurora, Echo, and Whisper nodded solemnly. They knew that what they would attempt the next day would be more than a personal achievement. It would be a legacy for the entire river. As night fell, the group rested, each lost in their own thoughts and final preparations. The waterfall roared incessantly, a constant reminder of the challenge ahead. Brilliance gazed at the stars reflected in the churning water, feeling the weight of the moment. Tomorrow, they would discover if their journey, their growth, would be enough to overcome this final, greatest obstacle. The day dawned grey, with a fine mist hovering over the churning waters. Brilliance and his companions woke early, their hearts pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. The roar of St. Anthony Falls seemed louder than ever, as if the waterfall itself were issuing a challenge. "It's time," Brilliance said, looking at each of his friends. Aurora, Echo, Whisper, and even old Leap were there, ready to face the ultimate challenge. They positioned themselves at the base of the waterfall, where the water frothed and swirled in treacherous whirlpools. The passage they had built was visible only to trained eyes, a series of subtly altered currents, strategically placed rocks, and small refuges crafted by the beavers. "Remember," Brilliance shouted over the deafening noise, "we're not fighting the waterfall, we're dancing with it." With one final nod, Brilliance launched himself into the turbulent current. He immediately felt the brutal force of the water trying to pull him back, but he was prepared. With precise movements, he navigated between the rocks, taking advantage of every small, favorable current they had created. Aurora followed closely, her natural grace complementing Brilliance's strength. Together, they formed a synchronized duo, helping each other through the most difficult moments. Whisper used his almost invisible form to slip through impossibly tight spaces, at times seeming to merge with the water itself. His subtle but constant presence served as a guide for the others. Echo, unable to swim against the powerful current, played a crucial role in another way. Leaping from rock to rock alongside the waterfall, she shouted instructions and warnings, her sharp eyes spotting dangers the swimmers couldn't see. As they climbed, each gained meter felt like a victory, but the waterfall did not yield easily. Halfway up, a sudden shift in the current caught Brilliance off guard. He was slammed against a rock, the impact nearly knocking him unconscious. For a terrible moment, Brilliance felt his body being dragged backward, all their progress threatening to be lost in seconds. Then he felt something, or someone, pushing him upward. It was Leap, the old salmon, using the last of his strength to give Brilliance the boost he needed. "Go on!" Leap shouted, his voice nearly drowned out by the roaring water. "You carry all our dreams." With one final heroic effort, Leap propelled Brilliance past the critical point before being swept away by the current. The old salmon's sacrifice ignited a fierce determination in Brilliance's heart. He wouldn't fail now. With renewed resolve, Brilliance led the group through the final, most treacherous stretch of the waterfall. Every movement was a struggle, every breath a challenge. But they persevered, using every trick, every skill they had learned throughout their long journey. When they finally reached the top of the waterfall, exhausted and gasping for breath, a breathtaking sight awaited them. Before them, the waters calmed into a crystal-clear lake, surrounded by untouched forests, and there, bubbling gently from the earth, was the source of the Mississippi, the very beginning of it all. Brilliance looked at his companions, his eyes shining with tears of joy and relief. They had done it. Not only had they reached their goal, but they had also opened a path for all who would come after them. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. A deafening noise cut through the air, louder even than the roar of the waterfall. It was the sound of heavy machinery, excavators and bulldozers. Horrified, Brilliance and his friends saw that a human construction crew had arrived in the area. Plants were being uprooted, trees felled. The source, the very heart of the river they had fought so hard to reach, was under threat. In that moment, Brilliance understood that their journey wasn't over. In fact, the true challenge was just beginning. "We've come so far, overcome so much," Brilliance said, his voice filled with emotion and urgency. "But our greatest battle is still ahead. We must protect this place, not just for us, but for every creature that depends on this river." Aurora, Echo, and Whisper nodded, their gazes steely with determination. They knew that what they did next wouldn't just be for them, or even just for the Mississippi. It would be for all rivers, for all of nature facing similar threats. With the sounds of machinery drawing closer and the future of the river at stake, Brilliance and his companions prepared for the ultimate test of everything they had learned and become. The fight to protect the Mississippi, and perhaps all rivers, was about to begin. Faced with the imminent threat to the source of the Mississippi, Brilliance and his companions acted swiftly and decisively. They knew they couldn't face the machines directly, but years of overcoming challenges had taught them to think creatively and work together. Echo, with her ability to move between water and land, played a critical role. She infiltrated the workers' camp, observing their plans and routines. Meanwhile, Whisper used his nearly invisible form to slip among the equipment, disconnecting wires and causing minor malfunctions that delayed construction progress. Aurora rallied the region's aquatic creatures, organizing an awe-inspiring display of wildlife. Schools of colorful fish, rare frogs, and even playful otters appeared in areas where the workers were preparing to dig, making it impossible for them to ignore the rich biodiversity they were about to destroy. Brilliance, meanwhile, led the largest and most daring part of the plan. Using the knowledge they had gained about the river's currents and geography, he and a large group of fish created a stunning natural spectacle. They manipulated the currents to form patterns on the water's surface, shapes that resembled ancient and mysterious symbols. The effect was immediate and powerful. The workers, seeing the inexplicable patterns on the water, the rare animals appearing everywhere, and the constant failures of their equipment, began to hesitate. Rumors quickly spread about the site being sacred or protected by forces beyond human understanding. News of the strange events reached environmentalists, scientists, and even the media. Reporters arrived to cover the phenomenon at the Mississippi's source, inadvertently documenting the incredible biodiversity of the area and the importance of its preservation. Under mounting public pressure and spooked by the unexplained occurrences, the construction project was finally abandoned. It was announced that the area would be declared a protected natural park, ensuring the preservation of the Mississippi's source and its surrounding ecosystem. As news of the victory spread throughout the river, a celebration unlike any other took place. Creatures of all species gathered to rejoice, their voices joining in a chorus of joy that echoed along the entire Mississippi. Standing at the edge of the source with his loyal companions, Brilliance felt a profound sense of fulfillment. His journey had begun as a personal quest, but had transformed into something far greater. They hadn't just reached the source of the Mississippi, they had united the river, inspired countless creatures, and in the end, saved the very heart of the great river. "What do we do now?" Aurora asked, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of victory. Brilliance looked at his friends, then at the long stretch of the river that lay before them. "Now," he said with a smile, "we begin our journey back. We have stories to tell, lessons to share, and an entire river to protect." And so, with hearts full of hope and renewed purpose, Brilliance and his companions prepared for their next great adventure, carrying the message of unity, perseverance, and environmental protection to every corner of the mighty Mississippi. Close your eyes, my beloved ones, and let the magic of the night embrace you. Tomorrow, we shall share more stories to bring you joy. Sweet dreams and good night.